Hey, everybody, welcome back to Pro AV today. You know, if our industry is going to continue to grow at the pace that we are right now, we're going to have to start doing things a little bit differently, specifically when it comes to welcoming new blood and new communities into the AV industry, especially from an employment and recruitment standpoint, all the way to a product education and community and emerging market engagement as well. But, you know, it's really interesting to hear different perspectives from different people about not only how they got into the industry, but maybe some of the things that they learned as someone who's been on the outside of the industry for a while. And I met this next guy at Infocom, and his story really resonated with me because he brought a lot of great insights as somebody who has been on both sides of the token on the AV kind of manufacturer side, and then spent time outside of the industry as well. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Nick Milani from Epiphan Video. Nick, thanks so much for hopping on Pro AV today.
Thanks, Ben, for having me. Excited to chat with your folks and share my story.
Well, Nick, I kind of teased it a second ago, but we had a chance to sit down and chat for probably a good 20, 30 minutes at Infocom. And, you know, you had a chance to share your story with me, and it's something that resonated. But I'd love to give you a chance now to share that with our viewers.
Yeah, I'm one of those unique folks that's kind of journeyed through a couple different industries and a couple different verticals throughout my career, always tech related. But it's very non-traditional for most of the folks in the AV industry, which, you know, what my experience typically come from a very AV-centric kind of background, oftentimes doing shows, that sort of stuff, and then kind of work their way up through. Whereas I actually started at Motorola on the IT side of the house and more of the enterprise technology, and then shifted over into workplace technology, first in mobile computing. So if you think police officers with laptops in their cars, and then into the furniture space and Herman Miller and working on how do we design spaces that accommodate humans first and have technology in them, as opposed to how do we design spaces with technology, and oh, by the way, the humans have to figure out how they make them work. And so, you know, coming from that space and then finally moving over into the AV industry at Crestron and now at Epiphan, it's been really fascinating to see just how differently each one of those industries approaches problem solving, approaches, you know, human-centered design, approaches accessibility, talent development, all these different factors, because they are wildly different marketplaces.
That's a great point too. And like I mentioned kind of at the top of the show, from a sales standpoint, really the industry has pretty much never been hotter, right? There's demand for products, and we literally can't keep up at this point.
Yeah.
But, you know, one of the challenges historically has been, as we grow into some of these new markets, whether it's things like command and control rooms or education spaces or security, we have the technology, and the technology is there, but maybe it's because of lack of education on our end. Maybe it's a lack of funds or a number of different things, but we've historically done a poor job as a community of engaging those emerging markets and in turn, the people that are in those emerging markets. What are some of the things from your perspective that you see as a community we could start to immediately do better on?
Well, I think one of the parts that's, you know, tricky is that idea of human-centered design. How do we put the people at the front of the conversation? And oftentimes it's the hardest question to ask. You know, because Ben, we're abstracted from them. Through the process of the way our spaces are designed, you know, typically what happens is all these decisions get made, and then the AV technology folks kind of show up in the 11th hour, and they're left to make some assumptions and guesses oftentimes. And what it does is we get excluded from a lot of those areas where we could be applying our knowledge and our problem solving around technology. But I think the thing we should dial up and really think about is how do we get ourselves a seat at the table by demonstrating those principles of human-centered design, empathy for the way people are using, thinking about what technology needs to be in the place, not just putting everything everywhere. And that's been a big problem for us, by the way. Like, part of the reason why we haven't gotten a seat is because oftentimes we, you know, if one's good, then seven's better, and let's put 12 in there, right? And
Right.
you know, and the more the better, the more microphones, the more this. And what happens is we see a pattern that it starts to confuse and overwhelm people, and they don't necessarily know why it's there. And so the tricky part is a lot of us don't really know why we're in those spaces. We're not sure how it works. We're not sure what the technology means. So it is natural for us to discover these together. And as we think about these emerging markets, we got to, one, give ourselves I think, a little bit of credit about the knowledge we have. We got to give ourselves a little bit of patience and humility to walk into those solutions and think to ourselves, I don't have to have the answers, but I have to ask really smart questions. My job is ultimately to assimilate how do these things, which is technology, these objects support the humans and that their outcomes are. And we ask them, what is the goal or the outcome? Then we can start to work backwards from it.
Well, and one of the challenges you mentioned of human-centric design is not only kind of communicating the value to the end user, but it's communicating really cross community, right? One of the things that that you've seen pretty recently is a lot of integrators and consultants really bringing on IT minded folks to have some of those conversations, and that's one of the really one of the biggest areas, in my opinion, that we can continue to grow as a community is almost on the inverse token of what you were talking about, not feeling like we do know everything and not being so exclusive that we kind of isolate some of our other communities out there. But let's stick on IT for a second. What are some of the things really that are jumping out right now? Is somehow we keep missing like ships in the night. We keep
Scale and repeatability.
miscommunicating.
Scale and repeatability.
Yes.
Scale and repeatability. And if you want to see the influence of IT, I mean, look at the room systems, right? Look at Zoom, Teams, room systems. You see that this is a highly repeatable solution that goes into a room consistently every single time. This has been, to me, the biggest gap. If you look at most other kind of more mature industries, it is about, I want to have a repeatable solution that I know can scale and that I minimize that downtime. And so IT folks are really obsessed with those concepts. Does it play nicely with the existing ecosystem? Because they're trying to manage millions of endpoints with dozens of people. And I think on the other side of it is that, the AV community has come at a little bit more of a, how do I take the most complicated spaces and make them work in an acoustic environment? So, I mean, that's really tricky stuff to go solve. That's the blending of the two worlds we need to have. We need to understand that there's always going to be a space for custom, but if we can appreciate what it means to deploy at scale, I think we're going to have a lot better, a lot more success with customers. We're going to have a lot less friction with those IT folks when they come to the room, because that's really what they're trying to vet out: scale and repeatability.
Well, naturally, that next step, once you talk about that integration process, is the end user, right? And the end user really plays a pretty unique role in today's AV market versus where they may have previously, where in a lot of cases, not only are end users users of the tools, but they are decision makers, trainers, and held accountable for those decisions. And it's so tricky because for a long time as a community, we've focused so exclusively on the channel, the distributor network, the integrator network, that we've, call me crazy, but at times we've forgotten that our end users exist. Now end users are making some of these decisions, and especially as you start getting into some of these newer markets, you look at education, right? The IT managers for the districts are now having to make these calls, and how do we as a community better reach these people? I mean, it's such an interesting world, but how should we continue to reach these people?
Yeah, I think it's always been a challenge with channels and the way that you just kind of naturally expand outwards towards the customer. I think it's about partnership and working together for best in breed. I think we've got to remove some of the animosity and fear that exists between the dealer and the OEM. We have to look at it as, if you're working with an OEM, that you go with a project and you're concerned that they're going to go tell somebody else or go direct, you're working with the wrong partners.
Right.
Right? Like, we just have to remove that. That's not in the best interest of our business, it's not in the best interest of our customers. And again, human-centered design means we bring best of breed of all the thinking together, and we work together as a team to bring all those perspectives in at once so we get a better solution and an outcome. And ultimately, what we need to figure out, what we need to drive, is customer satisfaction. And I think there's probably a really fascinating discussion we could have over drinks about what are the customer retainment numbers in our industry. And if you look at a spectrum of dealers and resellers, I would imagine that if you ranked them based on their retainment numbers, you would really start to see who's the cream from the rest. And unfortunately, I've witnessed just in my roles throughout the year as a real revolving door where customers get really frustrated that a dealer comes in, has a very small-minded approach, does exactly what the customer asks them, by the way, which is oftentimes a trap, does exactly what the customer asks them, and then the customer's pissed off and they go to the next person. The next person comes in with the next snake oil and the snake oil, and it's always this silver bullet mentality. Well, the next rollout will get right. And I think that those cycles are they're getting old for customers, and I think there's a real opportunity for differentiation there, and for the dealers that go in and say, you know what, I'm going to sit down, understand and assess the customer's needs, and then I'm going to bring in best of breed manufacturers to hear directly what they need and make sure that that solution actually matches up. That's the best thing for the manufacturers as well, because I'm oftentimes left guessing what's my next big product innovation unless I'm having those interactions with customers. Handling the transaction, we don't want to touch it, but handling the customer and understanding what success looks like, critically important for everybody. So let's partner, let's work together on those things.
Well, we talk about some of those different markets as well. And this is a conversation that we have all the time. But the channel in its current form doesn't really exist in every single subset of AV, whether that's education, hospitality, healthcare, wherever, you know, and it's largely kind of the responsibility of the manufacturer, like you mentioned, to really not only engage, but kind of educate those markets on some of the things that they might need, because you're right, it is a trap to do exactly what somebody typically asks for, because they're not thinking about 10 years down the road when they need to integrate the NDI system. And
Sure.
I mean, look, we talk about scalability, repeatability. The end user doesn't always know that they need that, but you know from a hardware manufacturer perspective, especially as you look at some of these markets that are so tech rich, the channel doesn't exist in the same form. How do you guys as a manufacturer deal with that?
Well, first up, I think we need to hold the manufacturers accountable to actually have some thought leadership. I mean, geez, this is an industry where you have these mega companies out there producing products, but not driving any thought leadership, no research, no real innovation, no studies on human centered. These are the things Herman Miller, if you look at the Grand Arc of Furniture, the chair I'm sitting in is an embodied chair, right? That they partner with recently with Logitech on. This thing has 10 years of research and development in it, and studies with people, and it's really incredible the amount of depth they go into understand the human, and then provide that knowledge to the dealer and the channel so they can better assimilate and get themselves set up for those different verticals. As opposed to right now, where I feel like we're in a scenario where a lot of the manufacturers, they don't want to put a mark on the wall because they're afraid that they might say no to somebody. And I think in doing so, we're doing a disservice to the entire channel. So, one of the things that we've tried to drive really hard is thought leadership at Epiphan, and trying to have here's our belief on the best way to do XYZ. Might be wrong, but at least there's a mark on the wall. We're going to stand for something, and then allow the channel and the customer start to use that as an orientation. As I always say, sometimes it's about putting the mark on the wall so you can beat it up, not that it's right. And that iterative process starts with a first iteration, right? So I think that's a space where I'd love to call on other manufacturers to push further.
Well, Nick, I actually agree with you 100%. That's largely what my day job is. But, a lot of times, people hear thought leadership and it jumps out as a 4-letter word, because typically what somebody maybe who has a more difficult time making that jump to creating thought leadership thinks that it's self-aggrandizing, it's self-promotional, it's all of these things. And one of the things I'll commend you guys on is every single trade show you guys at, it feels like you're broadcasting, you're creating content, you're bringing in voices. And that's what thought leadership looks like, right? Engaging that community, bringing those community voices in, amplifying, educating, and inspiring them. And I could go down this train all day, but I'm going to give you another platform to plug the great work you guys are doing at Epiphan, because you guys are going live now. I know your tech allows people to go live, but you're going live from shows, and we have other manufacturers that at times I can't even get them to post a picture. So I mean, why the discrepancy there?
Well, I think we're living it, and that's the fun part about the position on the field that we find ourselves. We're fundamentally a company that's been super innovative. We've tried to take hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of technology, distill it down into a couple $1,000 edge device, complemented with great cloud tools that can broadcast, your story, your organization story in a 4K as rich as the big boys, right? It's about accessibility, giving people that ability to really fight for their strategic video needs. And strategic video is something that I think is lost in a lot of the discussions. We've been using video for survival. We've been using video just to try to get through our days. And what we're going to see in the next 5 years is we all kind of collectively come out of this fog. Now we're going to go, okay, so we know how the tools work. How do we make them actually work for us? As opposed to the other way around. Like, we've been working for these things too much. And so I love the fact that we actually go out and walk the walk and talk the talk. And I was smiling when you were saying about our live show, because I was just reflecting last week we tried to do a remote show with a 5G HubSpot, a 5G router, and it failed. So we went dead air for like 12 minutes on the show.
Look,
as we
that
scrambled
happens.
To try,
That
but
happens.
It happens. And you're like, dude, if you can't be safe in that space, and you can't help the other live event producers and enterprise producers and educators education producers see that side of it and in a really real and transparent place. Like, we think that's incredibly valuable. And I'll say, for anybody that's interested in, the broadcast space understanding, I think our YouTube channel with our live show, there's almost 500 some episodes dating back decades. It's incredible, the content that's on there. And it hopefully is a source to arm you with the knowledge you need to remove kind of the mystery, remove kind of that fear. And we want to make it approachable and accessible. We want to have everybody out there kind of feeling good, being good, doing good,
Well, Nick, look, this can't be the only time we have you on the show. I'm sure we'll have you on at least a few more times, because we could jump down about every single rabbit trail that we had a conversation about today. But again, Nick, thanks so much for coming on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Nick Milani over at Epiphan Video. Nick, we appreciate you.
Thanks, Ben. Have a great day.
And thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to watch next time.